All right, well, we are live. Welcome to another episode of Beyond ERP. Today, we're privileged to welcome an executive finance and operations leader, Richard Ronsley. Richard has spent over 14 years fostering exceptional teams, enabling IP-centric companies to thrive on a global scale. And his journey includes pivotal roles, notably steering Alpha Foods from its founder stage to acquisition, establishing the organization as a leading U.S. CPG brand. At Hootsuite, he orchestrated the setup of tax and treasury teams, overseeing international expansion into 5 new countries and managing crucial financial operations across 6 more. We've spent a lot of time with Richard over the years. We're thrilled to have him. I'm Louis Balla, joined by my co-host Gina Ostrowsky. Richard, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate you jumping on here, Richard. And why don't we just start off by asking a little bit about your professional journey. It's very diverse, so you have a lot of different experiences. So how have these shaped your strategies in driving sales, managing operations, steering companies towards global success?
Sure. So I started my career at Ernst & Young, spent about 10 years there before moving into industry. I started at a tech company here in Vancouver called Hootsuite, who had just raised a Series B and was growing quite quickly. So I guess I got the sort of startup growth stage bug, spent 4 years there, left for Alpha Foods, helped grow that CPG company from essentially the founder stage through acquisition, as you say, and then recently started at a med tech company here in Vancouver as well. And so, I think it's always intimidating when you join a completely new industry. But, even though every industry is a different animal, I think, the more often I've been through it, the more I realize that, every business has essentially, really the same issues. And so, they all need to navigate the same economic cycles. They all need to attract and retain the right people. And they all need to make the best possible decisions, based on incomplete data in an ambiguous world. So, I think when you come into a new industry with a learning mindset and ask really basic questions, you can add a lot to the culture you're joining by having them get you up to speed. And it's amazing sometimes how much everybody else learns, I think, in that process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good insight there.
Yeah, I was going to say in that vein, as your experience has spanned across several different industries. When you're coming in, and if you look at the macroeconomic trends we've seen just over the last couple of years, with everybody flying high right out of COVID, things slowing down a little bit last year, things picking up again. And, I don't know if we want to attribute that to an election year or not, but growth is definitely top of mind. When you're going into a new organization, what are some of the critical elements that really you think drive success for, any new organization that you're joining today?
Well, I think you hit it on the head, which is it's a very uncertain, environment right now. And so, again, unless you're, I guess, an arms manufacturer right now, I think, it has been a very difficult time for fundraising and in the capital markets generally. And so, again, it doesn't matter in some senses what industry you're talking about. A lot of those concerns remain the same. And so, now more than ever, making really sound business decisions, and I'm speaking specifically about, P&L fundamentals that maybe folks didn't care as much about in 2019, 2020, when it was, a growth story for everyone. And I think there has been a real sort of doubling down on, unit economics and cash preservation. And I think, again, to your point, that is consistent across almost every industry.
Absolutely. And I guess in that vein, from the technological side, speaking to the NetSuite Animal, we saw a lot of organizations adopt as a result of those, exploding trends 2 years ago. From a technology standpoint, what are some of the critical factors you think, as again, across the landscape, that organizations need to look at as they're going through these different phases from the macro standpoint?
Totally. I think it really comes down to understanding your business, right? And again, when cash is tight, when it's difficult to raise, that's when it's more important than ever to again, have a really clear understanding of your channels, your margins, your unit economics, because there is a lot less room for error. And so, I think obviously that's the focus, but And I think we're better positioned than ever to have all this information at our fingertips. Of course, AI is the biggest story for everyone, and I imagine every single conversation you guys have, someone mentions AI because it's just, it's, well, I don't want to call it the flavor of the week because I think it is going to fundamentally change things. But again, I don't, an AI can help you understand your business, but it can't understand your business for you. And I think that's the same for all these technology tools. So really, I think the key is with everything, just seeing through the noise and understanding what technologies really are going to help get you the data you need to make the key decisions for your business, and focusing on that as opposed to, again, just bells and whistles for its own sake. Because I think AI, for example, will be transformative maybe in the near future, but again, I don't think it's taken people's responsibility to think away from them just yet.
Yeah, we often joke AI this year and last is more a driver for your stock ticker than anything else. So I would agree with you. It's got a ways to go. There's some cool little nice to haves, but nothing is transforming at the moment.
It's a tool, right? I tell it's interesting. Here we just put a policy in place for the use of generative AI for our people, and how it is or is not appropriate for workplace applications. And I think back to when I was in high school, university, and you had Wikipedia, right? And everyone knew that was the first place you went because it could give you a really great starting point for everything, but you'd never put it on a paper and cite it. And I feel like AI is, the Wikipedia maybe of this professional generation, which is to say, look, yeah, that's the first place you should ask your question, but you need to cite your sources and do the work in the same way you had to with Wikipedia 20 years ago.
Yeah.
For sure. Sounds like you've had success optimizing your operations. So are there any technologies in general that you could maybe throw out there that you've used in your different roles?
Certainly. So, I mean, ERP and CRM, are essentially the backbone of any, I guess, sales-based business, particularly when, again, when you look at value creation, because it's customer sales and CRM is so important for that. And then, again, particularly on any volume-based business, your unit economics are so important. And so, again, having a really solid ERP for that purpose is it's crucial. But again, like anything else, it's garbage in, garbage out. So it's not enough just to have the tool, but you need to have a team of dedicated people that understand how the tool works and are committed to implementing it properly. Because again, it can be really powerful or it can be really misleading, and the tool doesn't know.
And as far as the different industries, the different stages organizations have been in, are there fundamental strategies that you've brought to each organization you've been working with to really help optimize, maybe jumpstart, or just get those organizations from point A to point B that you attribute a lot of your success to?
I think one of the most powerful tools you have when you start in a new industry or a new company is just it's ignorance. And it's funny because people are afraid to be wrong and they're afraid to not know the answer. But it's pretty incredible when you walk into a new place and a new culture and you say, hey, look, I'm new. I don't know what you're talking about. What does it mean? Why is it important? It's amazing how powerful that conversation can be for creating alignment amongst everybody else in the room. Right. And, that superpower lasts for maybe 6 months tops. But I think it's important to lean into that because, again, you're not the one bringing the knowledge necessarily, but you can bring the experience and the fresh set of eyes. And I think everyone can win from that.
And I guess with the different organizations you work with, from an operational, we'll call it continuous optimization, the notion of getting better through different quarters, different phases, how integral is just process mapping, defining those, as you're going through and doing discovery as a brand new CFO in an organization? Are you seeing a lot of organizations haven't given a lot of thought to how things should be mapped out, or is it a blend? What would you maybe attribute to not only what you're seeing, but also where you go from there?
For sure. And I think, it's less industry specific and obviously more sort of lifestyle specific. So, and by that, I mean stage of the business, right? Earlier businesses, sometimes it's a matter of just survival and bootstrapping. But the truth of the matter is, You don't know if you're getting better from quarter to quarter if you don't understand what to measure and what better looks like. And so, the two things I've learned that are really important, number one, obviously, is KPIs and what measures gets done. And again, these are things that everybody knows. But the second thing that I've realized is super important from an early stage in any company is sitting down with everyone, and that's your team, but it's your investors, management, and understanding what great looks like. And so that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes there's a focus on getting better without really starting with the end in mind. And so one of the things that I found to be very powerful, even before joining a new organization, is sitting down with, obviously the CEO, ideally the board, and understanding like, okay, guys, what does great look like for you? Because if you don't do that, you'll never know when you get there. And that can be a really dangerous thing as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Well, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about if you have any mentors or literature resources that has really influenced you over the years, maybe to your approach?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, again, look, everyone reads the same business books, and I think that's kind of table stakes. When I was early in my career, I had the opportunity to work for some really great partners at EY, and that really helped me sort of early on. And then, after I left, I spent maybe the next 10 years, honestly, without anyone I would necessarily consider my mentor. And that was fine, but it wasn't actually until I became a CFO that I met, the person who now I would consider a mentor, and I've learned an incredible amount from. And so, I guess my key takeaways from that for anyone else would be, look, mentorship is incredibly important. Don't panic if you don't have one, but you're never too old or too late in your career to learn from someone else. And so that, I think, is sort of the crux of it for me, is just having a terrific network and really developing that and protecting that.
And outside of just learning, I guess to take a step back, outside of just the excitement of switching careers, trying something new, taking a jump as maybe a controller to a CFO to an executive, any advice to our listeners who may be considering dipping their toes into something new, maybe looking to go to that next step up in their career? What would you say are maybe some of the critical elements they should be considering before they do? And, how would you help them, or lack of better terms, push them off the diving board to jump in?
It's a great question. I think the right answer, and it's not always the answer, but the best answer is that, your ability to rise within an organization, become more senior, it should be based on, I started at an accounting firm, and so the way that those firms all work is what I'll call a mentorship model. And the idea with those is that, if you come in as a staff, you're working for a senior, and then you become a senior staff, and then, your manager is training you for their job, and you have someone under you that you're training for your job. And I think the best organizations are a lot like that. I think, you should always have sort of that apprenticeship model. So you should have someone under you who you are training essentially to do your job. And hopefully you have a mentor or a leader, who is letting you sit in those meetings and being part of those conversations that will eventually let you do theirs. And so, I think you kind of can't lose from a certain perspective, because if you are in an environment like that where that's happening, it's great because, a rising tide floats all boat, and that'll happen for you. If you're not, you might want to find some place where you are, because again, I think, certainly in my experience, if you want to be a leader, you need to learn from other leaders, and you should be training the next generation of leaders behind you. And so I think from a cultural point of view, that's something I've always tried to foster in the organizations I've been in, and it's also something that I've looked for in organizations that I join.
And then lastly, with your NetSuite experience working with us, you saw NetSuite in its infancy stage. You saw it as it became more of the pseudo suite success packaging of elements like food and beverage and some of the other critical templatization of an ERP. What are some of the areas, not just specific to ERP or definitely not AI for this question, but what are some of those technological shifts that you're excited for, and maybe just some of the stuff that maybe you're a little wary of, like as you noted AI, but things in the next year you're proactively looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's interesting. My previous organization, as you well know, was on NetSuite. I've joined an organization that is a little bit more at the early stage, and so we use QuickBooks. And so, it becomes pretty apparent pretty fast, I guess, sort of the difference in capabilities between those two particular systems, for better or for worse. I mean, I would not want to let loose the majority of entrepreneur founders in NetSuite, when I think QuickBooks is a much more appropriate tool for, again, folks that may not have a deep accounting background, but it's obviously not as powerful, right? And so I think what's exciting, from a NetSuite perspective specifically is, again, I like that they have started customizing packages for particular verticals. Again, at my previous shop, we had the CPG specific package of NetSuite, and it came bundled with some really great stuff. It amazed me how much custom stuff we actually ended up having to build just to address things that I would expect to be consistent across the majority of CPG companies. But presumably those are the kind of things that they will continue to iterate and improve upon, because again, across industries and certainly within the same one, I think so many entities, they have their own challenges, but they really are the same more than they are different.
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, with that, I know we're up on time. I did want to thank our audience for listening in. A truly enlightening episode. Richard, really appreciate you jumping on, showing your valuable insights and really the intricate domains of how you've managed finance operations in your organizations. To our listeners, please feel free to reach out to Richard. Take a look at his expertise via LinkedIn. We'll provide a link there. Remember, as you go through your business transformations, optimizations, you don't have to do it alone. Here at Nuage, we help with that. Do want to thank everybody for tuning in, but Richard, I'd like to give you the last word. Anything you'd like to add or share with the audience before we conclude?
This has been great. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks very much.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.